It's Friday, October 14th, 2022, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Consumer prices rose again in September, exceeding expectations and showing that inflation remains a stubborn problem. Tom Howe reports the Consumer Price Index increased 0.4% in September after rising by 0.1% in August, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The jump means the Federal Reserve will likely continue to raise interest rates. The Bureau said increases in shelter, food, and medical costs were the biggest contributors to higher prices. The increases were partially offset by a nearly 5% decrease in gas costs, but the food index continued to rise, increasing 0.8% over the month. The annual inflation rate of 8.2% was down slightly from 8.3% in the previous month, though it remains a burden on consumers. Inflation reached a 41-year high of 9.1% in June. A feud between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia escalated further in a tense back and forth over President Biden's accusations that a Saudi-approved cut in global oil production was a gift to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Joseph Clark reports the Saudi Foreign Ministry said on Twitter that it rejects any dictates and that the country has acted to protect the global economy from oil market volatility. It comes after a decision by OPEC Plus to reduce oil production. President Biden had made thinly veiled public pleas and private lobbying to Saudi Arabia to maintain production levels. Analysts said the rare public animosity will not break deeper U.S.-Saudi economic, security, and diplomatic ties. While Republicans dominate Georgia's rural electorate and favor incumbent Governor Brian Kemp, turnout will be key to winning the Peach State's governor's race. National politics reporter Susan Ferricchio reports from Georgia, where a Kemp swing through the southern part of the state this week was aimed at urging supporters to get themselves and others to the polls, beginning with early voting next week. Kemp defeated Democrat Stacey Abrams in his first bid for governor by only 55,000 votes. Abrams is his opponent again this time around, and polling on the race is mixed. Kemp was ahead 10 points in an Atlanta Journal-Constitution Georgia News Collaborative survey released on October 11th, but another poll of likely voters, conducted by Quinnipiac University released Wednesday, showed the race a statistical tie, with Kemp up by just 1 point. You can read all of these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find our entire lineup of news, commentary, and sports podcasts at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. Polish ambassador to the U.S. Marek Mazurowski accused Russia this week of using its energy exports as a weapon and cautioned against believing Kremlin propaganda about attacks on Russian gas pipelines. In a wide-ranging discussion with National Security Team leader Guy Taylor, the ambassador said the West should increase deliveries of sophisticated weapons to Ukraine while Russia strengthens its missile attacks. He said Poland would, of course, be happy to see Ukraine in the foreseeable future as a NATO member, but an accelerated accession is unlikely given misgivings among some of the alliance's 29 other member nations. Just days after President Biden said the pandemic was over in an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes, a federal appeals court judge asked how it affected his ongoing effort to impose vaccine mandates on federal contractors. Anna Mohan, the Justice Department lawyer defending the contractor vaccine mandate before the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, said the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention still recommends vaccines. She acknowledged that if the three-judge panel hearing the case sided with Biden's view, they could send the case back to a lower court with instructions to narrow the policy. Lawyers have argued about the weight a president's word should be given in legal proceedings over government action, and there's no clear consensus. And finally, Stephen Dinan talks with the head of the National Border Patrol Council, the Union for Border Patrol Agents. Its president, Brandon Judd, says that Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas deserves to be impeached for misleading the public into thinking agents on horseback were whipping migrants as they crossed the Rio Grande last year. In a statement, DHS said Mayorkas was processing a lot of information about the incident at the time. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.